what an amazing journey you have had from like, thinking about this problem of video, meeting your co-founders, you know, finding this crazy professor to this now massive valuation. Can you tell us a little bit of the whole thing, dude? Like this is crazy, crazy stuff.
Yeah, you've been on the journey as well, right? I think you take one step at a time. I think when you're in it, in some weird sense, you kind of notice it less, right? Because it's just like one day, like one more employee, one more customer, a little bit more revenue. And then all of a sudden you look back and like, wow, we've gotten really far, like since we founded the company back in 2017. And from the outside world, right, I think people see kind of like the key moments, like they see the fundraisers, they see the big customers closing. But when you're kind of in it, right, it's just like every day kind of goes by. But like when I look back and think about all the things that our team has achieved, I think it's obviously it's been an amazing journey, right? Really tough, but I think very very grateful that we're here today.
So let's work it back. Let's work it from present to the back. So tell me the latest. How do you what propelled you from the last valuation to this valuation, and what was the seminal moment that sort of like put Synthesia on the map?
So I think a lot of course, like investors obviously look at top line revenue. That's very obvious, right? And I think it's what we've seen the last 2 or 3 years in AI is that there's a lot of willingness to pay for AI products, to try them out, both on kind of like consumer level where people like, you'll put down 30, $40 to try something out. At the enterprise, also putting down, really big contracts to just try out everything that's out there. Because right now everyone is panicking on like how AI is going to like transform their business is how people, I think, talk about it to the outside world. I think in reality, it's very fear driven that everyone is like, holy shit, AI is going to change everything. I got to be prepared for it, right? So people are trying all sorts of different things. That means for a lot of AI companies, like landing those initial contracts is great. And of course, that in itself is a fantastic achievement. I think what set us apart this round really was the expansion motion, right? Where we now have lots of clients we've worked with for like many years that consistently expand their accounts. And of course, expansion is generally like a better predictor of like customer health than just landing a contract, right? And so I think that's definitely one thing that stood out to investors. I think the second thing is probably just like the category we're in, which AI video has now advanced, obviously, a ton since we founded the company back in 2017. I think the last 2 years we've kind of seen, okay, it's a real market. There's like new competitors, other entrants. The market is kind of being sharded into different types of product for different users, etc. And I think in kind of like our kind of a domain, which is enterprise AI video, I think it's pretty clear that we're like the leading company, and that of course both we, but also our new investors think that even though we've made a lot of progress, there's so much more to go.
So you made an important point, which is super important, and I see that everywhere, which is it's easy to land because there is this novelty factor for all AI companies, but it's hard to stick the landing, right? Because a lot of people want to try a bunch of stuff, but they also churn just as fast. So what was your secret from sticking the landing of like this new AI video thing into then driving the expansion, especially enterprise?
So I think that in many ways, like the land is generally very driven by technology, AI models, cool things. And for us, of course, avatars is a big piece of that, right? That's what most people, when they think of Synthesia, they think of the avatars, right? Because they're very visual, very kind of visible way of interacting and seeing AI. And they're a massively important part of our product. I think that's a lot of the land. We start with that. But then the expansion is a lot of investments we've made in, dare I say, the kind of like less sexy things. It's a great video editor, right? But all have seen a great video editor before. That's not something you're going to go viral on TikTok for. It's great collaboration features. It's enterprise security. It's a publishing platform. It's SSO. It's a lot of things that each individual feature is not that exciting. But when you kind of put all of them together, which we've done for a specific workflow, all of a sudden you get these kind of compounding gains, of which avatars, yep, they're a big part of it. But it's also AI voiceovers, it's video editing. It's all these things that makes the platform into something which isn't just a cool thing. It actually is something that very demonstrable our customers can take and get a lot of like business benefit out of, right? They'll save a ton of money because they need to do way less video production. They'll increase their engagements of customer trainings and product marketing, whatever. So I usually think of it as like the land is like generally like has to be like the flash the pan kind of AI thing. The expansion generally, I think, comes more from a lot of the kind of less flashy investments, but that really makes it into a product that people love to use, right? And for a creator tool like us, it is super important that people love to use your product.
So was that through feedback that you vector into the creator and the sharing and the and the security and the privacy and all that? Or was it because you guys were thinking, we need more videos to be created for this sticky, so let's go figure out how to get more people on the platform?
It's definitely super driven by customer feedback, but I think you also have to be good at slicing and dicing the customer feedback, especially in AI, because there's definitely pattern, I think, which is that, as I started off by saying, well, I think a lot of it is like fear driven, that people really feel like they need an AI strategy, need to execute on it, but not always that customers know what they want. It's not always that they really understand the technology, well enough to understand, what's kind of like the art of the possible. And so what that can lead to is a lot of dreaming, which is people saying, oh, I want like an LLM to do everything in my business, just do customer support. And that's like great. That'll probably at some point, I'm sure everyone here will agree that that'll be possible, right? But there is a sequence to get there. And I think what you have to be really good at is to work with your customers to just to figure out what is the correct sequencing, right? What's a step we can take the next 2 months, which may not solve 100% of the problem, but let's say it solves 25% of the problem, with maybe also with some non-AI parts that maybe isn't as fancy and glittery, but like take them on a path, like how do we get there eventually, right? And that's, of course, us helping our customers, but also, of course, also very much driven by a deep understanding of our customers' problems. So I think the general starter advice usually goes, right? Like, don't just ask your customers what features that they want, ask them what problems are they solving, and really understand what problems they're solving, and what part of that can you change. So I think you have to balance like seeing things your customers want, but of course also really listening to the customers, right? And I think it is just one of those things where the buyer, maybe the C-level person that gets very excited about AI and avatars, all these amazing things. That's awesome, right? You really want to work with that person, but you also want to listen to the IT person who's rolling this out and is like, guys, if you're going to roll out Synthesia to 1,000 people in my company, I need permission controlled, right? I need SS. I need to make sure that these videos don't just like end up all over the internet with no security measures. And I think you just have to like listen to people at all levels. I mean, it depends on the product, of course, but for us, we have the users, which are like people actually making the content. Then you have IT that are generally in charge of like rolling out, the admins, and you have like the C-level folks who are the ones who think about a lot about like what's the kind of business outcome of this, what's our AI strategy, and so on. So I think you have to be pretty good at navigating that kind of entire landscape.
So what do you say no to? So I'm sure that a bunch of customers came to you and they wanted like flying cars and LLMs doing this and like taking on the board. Do you say no to some people? And then to those people who you say no, did some of them churn, or did some of you just turn them around? Like, what was the sacrifices in strategy that you have to?
Yeah, I mean, we've definitely said no to a lot of things, and that ranges from, less so the last 12 to 18 months, right? But previous in the company, there was like VR had a big hype cycle while we're building Synthesia, right? We had all these people telling us, guys, you need to make this work in 3D, right? We need to make VR experiences with avatars. And had we listened to that, we would fall down a rabbit hole of building things that are cool but not useful. I'd say more recently, there's a lot of people who are like very interested in kind of like real-time avatars you can talk to and have a conversation with. And I think that's one of those things where like, that's going to be a thing. It's going to be really valuable. But that's not necessarily where the technologies are today. And it's really important to understand if you want to talk to an avatar in real time, right? Why? Like what's the value proposition versus just having a voice interface versus having a chat interface, right? And there are some things where it probably makes a lot of sense if you're training someone. But there's also a lot of places where if you're calling customer support because you don't understand why your bill this month higher this month than last month, right? Is it then what everybody wants to do to like go on their computer and start a Zoom call, talk to an avatar that'll read out text that's already on your website? Probably not, right? What's more valuable there is maybe that you talk to this kind of system and it pulls up a picture of your bill and draws a red circle around the number that's gone up and explains to you why it's gone up. That's kind of a different twist on it, right? But that's not about necessarily a real-time avatar you can talk to. But again, just goes with like figuring out, okay, what's the problem you're trying to solve? And let's figure out where to get there together. But those kind of twist stands that comes to mind. But I mean, there's been a lot of things that people have wanted to do, right? But just been like, look, it'll come in the future probably, but we don't think it's worth the technology investment today because the technology is just not mature enough yet.
Yeah. So as you are building all these other features, how did your go-to-market change? Do you just bundle that in and the price for it? So right now you charge for video, right? And a platform fee. Is that right?
So we do basically it's basically a seats-driven model today, right? So I think the best way of thinking about Synthesia today for like the majority of the usage is PowerPoint 2.0. Essentially what we do is we enable office workers who used to produce a lot of slide deck content, a lot of text content, make videos instead. That has this like beautiful effect of a camp and explosion of video inside comments because now everyone can make video, right? that's the kind of core of it. Then we have an API. On the API, you can do things like create personalized videos. So you imagine like you make a kind of a template video, then you take the data from your CRM system. Maybe we've built an integration to Outreach, for example, right? We could take all the customer data there. And then you can create personalized campaigns for every single prospect that you have. That's charged differently because that's an API. We just rolled out AI dubbing, which is working with any kind of real video that comes off a camera. So not an avatar video, right? Like your, product explainer, you recorded like 2 years ago, whatever. You take that video, you put it into the system, and we spit it out in French, German, Spanish, whatever. That's also something that we meter. So we're already now we have like a kind of like a metered usage model, and then we have kind of like the seed-driven model.
Yeah. And where is this going? Like where, what else are you gonna, as you introduce new products and you broaden your audience, will the pricing change, or how are you thinking about your pricing and packaging?
Yeah, I think pricing and packaging feels like one of those things you never get to like a complete answer. Like you're always discussing it. I think for the majority of the product, like the seed-driven model kind of like works pretty well. But I think eventually probably we'll probably want to move into a world where it's like mostly consumption-driven, right? But as with anything, there is a lot of like pros and cons. I think in AI, there's like this somewhat unique aspect of it where a lot of actually running AI products, right, is generally like more expensive than running like your traditional kind of SaaS, spreadsheet with a glossy face on it, because you have to do inference, right? For us, it's not, the pricing to sell a seat for you to sit and make avatar videos is pretty trivial, because the amount of videos you can realistically make in one day as a human person sitting down and typing up things is like, that doesn't really matter for us. But if all of a sudden you're like, hey, I want to create 100,000 videos for 100,000 sales prospects, right? All of a sudden that's a lot more expensive to just send the emails out.
Right.
So I think there's like the different products will require kind of different pricing and business models. But if you had to put like gun to my head, I'd say that, in 5 years time, will probably be mostly around like the kind of consumption of the videos rather than the creation.
Consumption of the videos, not the creation of the videos.
The videos, exactly. So the end viewers,
awesome.
right? How many people are actually watching your videos and interacting with the videos?
Right. Now that makes a lot more sense, because then that's closer to, driving success, right? Somebody's watching your video, interacting with your video. That means that the video created an engagement point, as opposed to just, creating a bunch of videos.
Because it's like how many videos, a customer creates is, of course, it's probably the best proxy for how much value they get out of the product today, but it's by no means a perfect proxy, right? Because I could sit here after this call and make 200 videos for Synthesia that is never watched by anyone, or if they watch it, they just absolutely hate them.
Right.
And you could sit and you could make one video, right, that 1 million people watches and leads to, $1 million in business for you.
Not only that, but you have this information around what makes people watch. So you can actually recommend how to actually make a video, right?
Exactly.
So talk a little bit more about that. Like you know the engagement of your video. So how are you going to bake that into
So we launched our AI video player, which is our first foray into also kind of like owning the publishing part of the value chain. And what that really means, right, is that rather than downloading an MP4 file when you've made a video with Synthesia, you use our video player to show it to end consumers. That has a bunch of added benefits, because for our customers, like what we begin to do is, as you said, look at the engagement data and say, hey, Manny, like this video isn't really performing that well. That's step one. Step two is we go back to the creation part of the value chain and say, hey, Manny, this video isn't really performing that well. I've made 5 new versions for you. Do you want to review them so I can kind of try and push them out? Or maybe at some point just goes like, Manny, I've created 100 new videos. I've already like found the one that works the best to do whatever it is that you wanted to do. We're also going to make interactive videos, right? So one of the big part of our vision is really to evolve video from MP4 files that are static, hard-baked, beginning and an end, broadcasting video essentially, to video that's more kind of two-way, right? You're watching the video and you can ask it a question. If it's a training video, you can say, hey, I didn't understand that. Can you explain it in a different way? That is, I can go back and explain it in a different way, collect information, or we can make video into something that's a bit more kind of fungible than just, the same video that we show to everyone. And so that's not really possible unless we also own the kind of publishing step, right? Because that's not going to be possible on, YouTube, for example. So that's a world we're like slowly moving into, also being the publisher of the content.
So I see you so right now you're selling into whom in the organization? Because I know the majority of your videos are used for internal training at the moment, right? But that is expanding. So where is your landing point? Where is your expand? And where do you see yourself selling into?
So I think that's definitely true if you go like 18 months back in time, that it was like mostly internal training. 4 years ago, we launched the product for the first time, but the avatar quality was, way worse than what it is today. It was very clear very early on that internal low stakes training was the best place for us to start. we could still drive a ton of value and cost savings of voiceovers and video production. And the quality of the videos were good enough, right? You wouldn't want to put that on the front page of your website. But we see the last 12 to 18 months, a huge shift towards external facing content, which means our customers now creating customer support content, product marketing, a whole bunch of other things. We're not making like, the Super Bowl ad or like the meta ad that are like very, very high stakes piece of content. But if you go a little bit further down the funnel, we operate quite a lot there as well. But internal training is definitely also like, it's still a big ICP for us, right? What we generally see happen is that because we're like a bottoms up type of platform, we'll have someone who comes in, starts on the freemium, makes some videos. Often there'll be customer support, sales enablement, internal training, product marketing today. They'll begin creating something, their colleagues will see it, and then we kind of slowly build up to this sort of deal, right? And usually where we end up is in the CIO's budget, where we sit next to products like, Atlassian, Microsoft Office, Slack. These more like general productivity tools, which really can be used by people from any department and are used by people from any department because they're very accessible.
Right. What was really interesting, I was talking to your co-founder the other day. He was mentioning how the hypothesis is very similar to video gaming, in which the more realistic and engaging the person in the video is, the more likely you're going to get reciprocal engagement from the other human being, and that's just going to go up into the right. But that will clearly consume a lot more, LLM, but I guess whatever the equivalent is for video LLM. So how do you think about your margins? As you get more advanced, more sophisticated, you cannot charge a per seat anymore. You're going to have to figure out a way to maintain your margins high. Yeah. So how do you think about that?
So I think there's basically the way you get to these, higher quality outcomes is by training bigger models, which per definition is also the more expensive right? to inference. Of course, we are seeing a whole bunch of improvements in the entire stack, right? And I'm sure that the inference cost we have today will be significantly lower in 12 months and 24 months and so on and so forth. So I think we're kind of, I guess you have to make a decision on like, are you okay with like your margins maybe being a bit worse for a period of time, assuming that generally like price shoot will just go down, you'll get better models. And then there's a part of it, which is because we operate in we're a very applied company, even though we train foundational models and, have a massive GPU cluster, those sort of things, we are building models for a very specific thing. That means we can slice the models down. We don't have the same problem like a Sora, for example, where it's like, okay, this thing needs to be able to produce video of absolutely anything. Imagine, just type it in and we'll spit it out. For us, it's still dialogue-driven content focused on the human presenter, human dialogue. But the business part of this question, I think, is definitely, which is a story that's as old as most tech, which is, are you willing to invest in like slightly lower margins, doing things that may not like scale as well, knowing that eventually it'll get better and better, right? And I think that's, when I look at the market today, that seems to be the general theme, that everyone is expecting the price of compute to drop very significantly. We've seen that in text already. I think text is in many ways is a good way of like looking at what's going to happen to all the other modalities, because everything is based on transformer architectures, even if you're doing like video or audio or whatever, right? And I think in text, I would argue we've seen some degree of saturation of the models, like not seeing the same kind of explosive gains as we did early on. And there's a lot of work going into optimization, slicing the models down. If you look at just the price of like API call to OpenAI over the last like 2 years, I don't know exactly what the magnitude is, but I'm pretty sure it's like several magnitudes to do a call, right? So I think we are seeing the trend of it like going down. That's not something I'm like lying sleepless over yet, at least.
That's good. So it's really interesting because we're seeing the trend going down for the same models and even the skinning of the models, right? Like the mini model. Yeah. To see the newer models becoming like 2.01 is like 6 times more expensive than 2.0. And as you use new models, I think that it would be interesting to see if you're going to start skinning it up. But like, all right, so this is the training model. Are you thinking of like creating breakdown in prices? Like if you want to see somebody like emote a lot, that's one price point. If you want to see somebody who is just more straight face and not emote that much and not connect with the person, that's a different price. It's way cheaper, but you can crank that a ton of videos. Like, is that how you think about that? Or
I don't think the analogy is perfect, kind of like from text to video. I think in text you can argue that these new models is like, what's the IQ that you're willing to pay for this particular task, right? Whereas like, how smart of a person do you need? I think in video, you'll probably have like different video models that do different things. For me though, I'd say it's more product question of, the reason I think people like our product is because it's very simple and because the AI is a massive enabler under the hood, but I actually want you to engage the least amount possible with like different models and have to make all these kind of trade-offs all the time. when we have a model that can do emotions perfectly, I wouldn't want people to make videos without that. So I'd rather find a way to make that work, or maybe invest a little bit, in 6 months. Okay, we'll compromise on the margins and eventually get it to a point where it really scales. And I think what we will see, my feeling is on text also, we'll see that these new models are getting better and better for sure. But I think for most things that people will use LLMs for in the next 5 years or 10 years, I think the current models are good enough. I don't think it's so much a model question anymore. I think it's a lot of building the scaffolding, the product, the SaaS stuff, the go-to-market, all this sort of stuff that sits around it, battling human inertia, which I still think is the biggest rate limit of how quickly we can have AI doing kind of everything for us. And so I think we will, of course, see more and more gains, and some tasks will definitely be worth it to use those models. But my sense is that we can get very far with the kind of current iteration of models.
Yeah, I
you
totally
kind of add on all the scaffolding that sits on top of it, right?
Yeah, I don't think that we have bottomed it out yet. And there's way more uses of Synthesia inside an organization than there is advancements. There is opportunity to advance the model a little bit. So when when an organization buys you, you have this massive customers. Right? When they buy you, are they thinking, I'm going to stop hiring in the video department, or I'm going to lay off the video department? What roles you compress? You don't have to let people go, but you will definitely stop hiring as you scale out your programmatic video creation. So what roles are sort of jobs are impacted by the thing that you work out?
So there's a few different dynamics here. There is certainly one which I'd say in general is more external agencies, that in general you pay a lot to translate content, do voiceovers, and also do video recordings, right? Where it's just the price of, if you want to make a corporate video of yourself, just talk to the camera, nothing fancy, you're standing in the office, but it's a professional shoot, right? That is $25,000, and it's probably more if you're a really big company. It's extremely expensive, right?
Yeah.
And it takes a whole bunch of your time or the exec time. You're very dependent on that person being good in front of the camera. You can't go back. It has so many kind of downstream effects that's annoying. So there's definitely a lot of cost saving you can do there. And those are very real. And what we discovered early on was that one thing is the upfront cost of actually getting a videographer and a camera operator also out, right? That's annoying. But actually the bulk of the gain is after you've shot content and you need to edit it or translate it or do something different with it, because you can't do that with a camera, right? So there's a lot of there you just save so much money. You go to your boss and say, hey, I can buy some DC for $50K a year. And with this, this budget, we could make 2 videos with real cameras. And if you give me this budget, I'll make you 400 videos. That's a pretty, you could make way more than that. That's just really capped by how many people you have sitting in front of figures making actual videos, right? But you get a lot more for it. And what we see is that it's not so much today about replacing real video production necessarily. That's a good way to anchor the cost and the kind of efficiency impact. But it's a lot about net new content. So if you see what our successful customers doing, they're saying, okay, we have a big problem around customer support where people pick up the phone and call us. That's very expensive. How can we reduce the amount of people who call us on the phone, right? Well, if you can serve a video every time someone asks a question, that could be pretty powerful. That means that a lot of people will then not pick up the phone. And it's a very basic thing of I present you with 2 pages of text. You're not going to read it and you're not going to understand it. I present you with a video. Then there'll be a much higher percentage of people who'll just watch the video and they'll get the answer to their question, right? And it really is as simple as that. But if you had to record all those videos with a real person and a real camera, by the time you'd finish the 300 video that answers your 300 support question, the first 100 videos would already be out of date, right? And they're out of date and they are translated to 10 languages already. So you have to first fix the English version and then you have to so this problem just compounds, right? And when you use a product like ours, it's literally working a Word document. Open it up, change it, publish it, and off you go. So we see a lot of these net new use cases where you wouldn't have made video for it before, but now, maybe before you would have made 5 videos for the top 5 questions. Now you can have 300 videos for the 300 top questions. And of course, that has a much bigger impact on how many people pick up the phone and call your customer support.
But let me push back on that a little bit. Those videos were made by a videographer and you needed somebody to sit there and perform the script and read the script, and you needed the lighting and the whole situation. So it's fair to say that videographer and that editor is not making more high quality videos for something way more interesting. It takes way more time to make as opposed to wasting their time on the little things that you need to be updating, like product releases, for instance, right? You should one product release, and by the time it's out, it's 2 months before you have to reshoot it again because they need product shipping stuff. So it's interesting that you are creating more videos, but you're also, that role of like the product manager video creator is gone, or like this customer video creator, that role doesn't exist anymore.
I mean, I would definitely say like, being a camera operator or, sound guys, I mean, those definitely been impacted. And I think especially in 12, 18, 24 months with these technologies will be just, 5 times better than they are today. And what we do see though, is that even though we've made it very easy for people to make video content, we've enabled, millions of people to make videos, having the eye of what a good video is still very important, right? So if you're a video editor, and that's what we see a lot of these big companies, like the video production teams, right? They may spend less time like actually recording things with a camera, but they still do a lot of really great work in terms of like, what is a great video, right? If I don't know how much you've made video before, but I'm pretty sure if you were to sit down and make your first video ever, it probably wouldn't be the best version of that video. It'd be too long, clap on, like, and so like having someone there who's like, okay, all of a sudden, instead of our output being like 2 videos a month, now the output is like 50 videos a month. Plus we update, 30 videos a month. The role definitely changes, but I think what we have seen is that the by far best users of Synthesia that gets the most value of the product, right, is people who have video experience background, right? Because they can just be like so much more efficient. They're not dependent, or even if you take the avatar out of the equation, you just take like screen recordings with voiceovers, right? Every software company has a ton of those to show different parts of your product. With one person, right, you can make videos that look and sound completely uniform because the voice will be the same across all the videos. The visuals be the same across all the videos. You're not dependent on like Manny, who has a silky smooth voice in the marketing team, consider do all these kind of, like voiceover recordings or like an external. So it is, I think it has, of course, it will impact the job market significantly, not downplaying that at all. But I do think a bit of what we've seen with LLMs also, right, is that like great people who pick up these tools can also just become like 10, 50 times as efficient.
100%, 100%. So what is your competitive environment like? Because I remember, this area was busy, a year, maybe 2 years ago. And now all I hear about is you guys. So like, what was in the competitive environment then? What is it now? And why did it change? And where did it go?
Yeah, I mean, I think, when we launched in 2020 and the first couple of years after that, it was kind of like our little secret, how well the business was performing and how much value even like that version of the product could deliver to our customers. And then what started happening was that people started to see, okay, there's something pretty interesting here. If you take the overall umbrella categories being like AI video, right, then you definitely have like that's fragmented into like people making tools for Hollywood films. That's a very different we do, right?
Right, super
people
high.
Making things for like prosumer kind of TikTok style videos, etc. And then companies that make like enterprise AI video platforms, essentially, which is the kind of category that we're in. And I think when we look at like that category of the world, I would say that, of course, I'm very biased, but I think ultimately, I think what wins out, especially the enterprise, is a lot of workflow. It's not just about the models. And I think we were pretty good at building for workflows that didn't overly focus on just putting out lots of like cool stuff and very like demoable stuff, but actually really building to patch together that entire workflow and make it 10 times as effective, right? So, I mean, there's lots of other people who are doing great work in this space, and some of them are looking at different avenues now that we are. I mean, it's game on still, right? I think, it's still a young category, and there'll be so much more to come. Busy. But I think in enterprise, I think we definitely kind of have cemented ourselves to be like the premium solution.
So are you saying that you pull yourself out of the competition through speed? Because the speed of execution, hearing the customer says, and just do it.
I think, of course, speed matters. I think it's a lot of I think speed matters. I think not underestimating building a good go-to-market, like an enterprise go-to-market. I mean, you've done that yourself, right? That's hard. You need a lot of people. It's not just like hiring a bunch of salespeople and like let it go. There's so much more to that, right? Than investing in that very early on. And then I think it's also, not forgetting the business fundamentals, right? I know it sounds very obvious, but I think there's a lot of AI companies that build a lot of like very demoable stuff, and you get kind of addicted to the sugar high of like going viral, having lots of people come in, and you begin to chase that more than the underlying compounding value, right? So you have a lot of companies that go like this all the time. That can work out for a while. And I think, we also had our zigzag, but I think for us, more like just the compounding value of like getting ISO certified and building a great sales team and building SSO, like a lot of these, like, again, like these boring things, but like compounding together, they unlock bigger and bigger deal sizes. As I started off saying, one of the reasons that, investors, I think, were very interested in this round was because of the expansion motion, right? But that like, if you want to get to really big contracts in enterprise, it's not just like building your core little product thingy that does something. the CIO needs to be happy for you to roll it out.
Yeah.
That comes with a whole bunch. So I think a lot of like those things just kind of unlock, deeper relationship with the customers. And that's not always what will give you the most kind of short-term attention, right? And I think a lot of AI companies do have a tendency to get caught in, we have this saying into the utility over novelty, right? Which is building for lasting business value rather than like, short-term viral moments. And I do think there is, I'm not speaking about my competitors per se here, but I think generally, I think it's easy to get wowed by that, right? When you've gone viral once and you went from 0 to $8 million of ARR in like 2 months, it's pretty understandable why you're like, holy shit, right? Like I need to do this again. But I think it's, you have to build for the long term.
Yeah. And it's so interesting because I see two types of companies. One that, like you, right? They build for the compounded business value, and they are super judicious about the first batch of customers they bring in to make sure that they are nailing the go-to-market, nailing the stickiness, nailing the repetitiveness, nailing the renewal, so that you build on top of that and then you can accrue a business, as opposed to like, oh my God, everybody's buying my stuff, let's get more of it. And then 2 years later, when the contract comes up for renewal, they have a massive churn event, and then you have a leaky bucket at a very small stage, right? Like $8-10 million is not that big. And you cannot have like anything less than like, primo, retention if you want to go and scale it out. So what other mistakes are you seeing from, earlier stage AI companies or AI agent companies?
So I mean, that's really, I guess, in continuation of what we just talked about, but I do think there's a bit of this like shiny new object syndrome, right? Where us folks in tech, we're obsessed with like trends and new technologies and philosophizing on Twitter, coming up with new kind of buzzwords for the same old thing, right? And that does play, I think, a big role in inspiring story. I think those like, it's not to say that like that's entirely like a bad thing, but if you get too focused on like, oh shit, I have to build AI agents now because everyone's talking about AI. I need to train a foundation model because everyone's talking about today's foundation models, right? Constitutional AI chips, right? It's like there's always like a new thing that's like going on, and I think what can happen is that people then build too much for like the shiny new objects, right? That sometimes, of course, is right, but oftentimes it's I think the nature of these kind of hype cycles, right, is that come up with something. There's an early indication that something will be valuable or could do something. There's a Twitter philosopher who kind of puts that into like a really, really crisp blog post or tweet thread that gets everyone really excited. And over the long term might be true, right? But in the short term, like massively overblown expectations for like how well this stuff's going to work. Everybody jumps on that, builds for something. The product's like often doesn't really work. Then you go down this trail, the next new thing comes up. And I think you just have to be a little bit more steady, right? And not get too chased, not get too infatuated by whatever like the latest trend is. And remember that the tech world is extremely insular, right? And I think it depends a lot on who your customers are. But like for us, our customers are not tech companies. I don't even think technology companies are like a top 5 customer of ours. And if my top 5 customers was technology companies, I'd talk about this differently. But I know my ICPs, know my customers pretty well. And as much as I'm sure some of them have heard about AI agents and foundation models, right? That's not the lingo that they speak. It's not really the thing that they think about, right? They want to solve a business problem, and I'll help them solve the business problem. If it takes an AI agent or a foundation model, then we'll throw that in the mix. But I think it comes back to being customer obsessed ultimately.
No, that's awesome. Do you think that you moved from Copenhagen to London, and now you're building a company here in London? Do you think that being here in London gives you that perspective to take a little bit of a step back and be mired in this world of
I forgot who was talking. I had this exact conversation with someone that also founder, because I was like saying, there's definitely some negatives of not being part of the fabric of the tech ecosystem in the Valley, right? I do think that's true. But this guy was like, well, yeah, but you also kind of see it a bit from a distance, and you're less influenced by other tech people, right? Because when you are in London, I'm sure it's the same for you. There's a growing tech industry, and I'm bullish on London in general, but most business here, you meet a lot more non-tech folks, right? And so you get less of the just like pure kind of tech perspective where we just sit at dinners and talk about like AGI and and I actually do think that that's healthy, right? You can put a little bit at a distance, but it also has its negatives for sure.
Yeah, no, 100%. Victor, it has been such a pleasure to have you with us. You're always a big sharer, super humble on what you how you talk about yourself and your company. You have an incredible team. I met a lot of people in your team, and everybody's just awesome to hang out with. So congratulations on all your success, and thank you for sharing your path.
Appreciate it. This was fun.